Hi, I'm Bruce Walton from Road Safety Analysis, and this is the sixth in a series of 10 bite-sized demonstrations of my favourite things which MAST can do. In this clip, I'm going to look at how you can take figures out of MAST and rate them relative to the population in order to give yourself a comparative indicator of risk. This uses a process which is similar to the process that we used at Road Safety Analysis when we published our child resident casualty risk report last year, although we used a slightly more complex algorithm that took account of crash reporting. If you want to know more details of that, I've posted a document explaining it all in the MAST user forum. But let's have a look at the basic idea. I'm going to take a slightly simpler example for the purposes of this demonstration. Let's suppose we wanted to see how motorcyclists who were involved in crashes were distributed around the country in order to get an idea of where the highest concentrations are. To do that, I'm going to open up a vehicles blank report, and I'm going to organise this report rather than by crash date. I'll remove the crash date dimension from the rows tab there, temporarily causing the numbers to disappear. Instead, I'm going to look at the vehicles involved in crashes by the home of the driver. So that gives me the information by where the driver lived. As you can see, we've got about 500,000 drivers where the postcode, the resident postcode of the driver, was not recorded in the Stats 19 return. They're not of interest for the purposes of this analysis, so I'm going to turn them off. There we are. So there's the drivers involved in crashes where I know where they came from within the United Kingdom. And I want to particularly concentrate on motorcyclists. So I'm going to go to the filter tab and I'm going to add the vehicle type dimension. So I'm seeing only motorcyclists who were involved in crashes. Not necessarily those that were injured, of course, just those that were involved. So I'll drill down into the vehicle dimension and I'll turn on motorbike there. There we are. So that's all motorcyclists involved in crashes. Now at the moment, that's that's organising that information by the top level of MAST's geography hierarchy, which is the countries of the United Kingdom. It would be useful to have something that differentiated England a bit more clearly. So I'm going to use a very useful facility that MAST has got here to drill down to an appropriate level of detail for this report. Rather than using the plus and minus buttons to do this, I'm going to use a different technique. I'm going to point at the dimension button down there on the rows tab, the driver home dimension. I'm going to right click on it to bring up the shortcut menu, and I'm going to choose the top command on that shortcut menu, the drill down command. In this case, it's saying drill down to level UK Government Office region. And if I do that, it'll show Scotland, Wales and the Government Office regions of England in a single report without having staggered headings, which is quite a useful thing to do. So those are motorcyclists involved in crashes by which region of the UK they came from. Now, if I wanted to do further analysis with this, what I need to do, of course, is download that information into Excel, which is, of course, easy to do. As soon as you click on the Download Excel action link, and I'm going to click on Open here because I want to open it in Excel to work in it straight away. MAST will download the information exactly as you see it in grid view into Excel. Yes, Excel, I really do want to open it. And there it is. Okay. So I've got all my motorcyclists by whereabout they came from. I'm not really interested in the not known, so I'm going to get rid of them. And I'm going to get rid of the total row because, of course, I can calculate totals in Excel for myself. So there are all the motorcyclists where I know where they come from, exported directly into Excel. Now, one interesting thing that I might want to do there is calculate a percentage. So what percentage of motorcyclists come from each region? That, of course, is a simple formula in Excel. I just take the number of motorcyclists from that region divided by the total number of motorcyclists who come from a known region. So I'll just select the entire area there, and I want to make the row numbers absolute. And there we are, express that as a percentage. 11% of motorcyclists involved in crashes are resident in the East region. And simply by copying that formula down, there we are, that's the equivalent figure for every other region. So you can see there that 19% of motorcyclists involved in crashes come from London. Now, is this because there are more motorcyclists who live in London, or is it simply because there are more people who live in London than there are living anywhere else? This is the kind of thing where it's very useful to get an idea of how the percentages drawn from the road safety information compare to the population as a whole. So let's go back to MAST and see how we can make that calculation. If I switch back to MAST and I go back to my Select Report screen, you've got a tab in your Select Report screen called Populations. And what that allows you to do is to extract population values from MAST, which are expressed in exactly the same way that geography is expressed in every other MAST report, giving you directly comparable geographical information. Now, if you extract this information for local authority areas, I should point out the populations may not be exactly the same as those released by the Office for National Statistics. This is partly because the date at which those populations were calculated may be different. It's also because populations in MAST are calculated at postcode level, which of course they have to be for the purposes of calculating indices and so forth. And because postcodes are not exactly congruent with local authority boundaries, you can't expect the numbers to add up exactly. But they are plenty accurate enough and plenty good enough for the purposes of what we're doing here. I'm going to open up my populations blank report, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a set of population figures which are exactly comparable to the motorcyclist figures which I downloaded a moment ago. To do that, I'm simply going to set up my population geographical area dimension so it's identical to the dimension I used in the vehicles report a few moments ago. So I'm going to right click on it and drill down to the Government Office region, like that. And I'm going to filter out my not knowns. There we are. There's a comparable set of totals, and I'm going to download those into Excel. And there they are. There's a comparable set of populations with exactly the same regions in exactly the same order as I extracted a moment ago from vehicles. So I'm just going to copy those and I'm going to paste them into my report with my motorcyclist figures. So I know what percentage of motorcyclists came from the East region. What percentage of the population comes from the East region? Well, that's a very similar figure. I can take that formula and copy and paste it into there. And that's doing exactly the same calculation for the populations as the one I did a moment ago for the motorcyclists. So, looking at London, I saw that 19% of my motorcyclists came from London. 13% of the population come from the London Government Office region. So, motorcyclists are indeed overrepresented in London. By contrast, I can see, for example, that motorcyclists are underrepresented in Scotland. 5% of the motorcyclists who crash come from there, but 9% of the population comes from there. And if I wanted to express those two percentages in a way that combined them together into a single number, what I need to do is calculate an index. And that's very easy to do. All you do is you take the figure of the motorcyclists and divide it by the percentage of the population. That gives you an index value. I think I'll get rid of the ridiculous number of decimal places there. There we go. That gives you an index value calculated in exactly the same way that the indexes in Mosaic profiles are calculated. I'm going to copy that down all the way down, and I can see that motorcyclists resident in London who are involved in crashes are 49% overrepresented compared to the population of London. On the other hand, if you look at the situation in Wales, there's a 50% underrepresentation of motorcyclists compared to the total population of Wales. So that gives you some idea of how these figures can be derived from the base data which is available in MAST. and the indices allow you to rate a comparison of figures that you've derived from MAST and expressed as percentages compared to underlying population. This is very similar to the technique that we used when we calculated our child casualty risk report. Although, as I say, if you want more details about that, have a look at the posting that I made about it on the MAST user forum. Well, that's it for this one. In the next bite-sized clip, I'm going to demonstrate another of my favourite things which MAST can do, how you look at casualties relative to the vehicle types which were involved in causing the casualty and the crash in which they were involved.